Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
Hello, and welcome to The Art of Being Human. This is a show that's going to be based on some psychology, some counseling. It's an effort to help you to understand yourself, because the more you understand yourself, the better off you're going to be health-wise. Now, you have to remember that for every behavior that you show, there is a payback and there is a cause of it. If you are behaving in a certain way, there's a way that for you to express your behavior. If you behave in a certain way, there's a reason for that. You may not understand the reason, but there is a reason. And there's also a payback. People will behave in a certain way because they expect a certain result. And if they don't get that result, then they get angry, they get depressed, and so forth. So I'm going to start off with a story. And this story actually happened to me. And it'll give you an idea of what behavior can become, how aberrant it can become. So a few years ago, I had a serious back injury, and I saw a doctor 3 times a week. And I was the first one in his practice on the days that I had been scheduled. There was also a man who saw the doctor 3 times a week, but he's a lot older. He didn't have any pain. He was retired. He could do whatever he wanted to do with his time. I was put first because my pain level was very high. Now, he was very unhappy because he wasn't first. I was first every time I was there. He was second. And he started to grumble. Why can't I be first? I want to be first. It's my turn to be first. And as the days went by, the grumbling got louder and louder and louder. And I thought, should I intervene or should I just ignore it? For the most part, I ignored it until one day he kind of had a meltdown. And his meltdown was so bad, he actually stood up and he started yelling, "It's my turn to be first. I want to be first. Why can't I be first?" And I didn't know whether I should intervene or just kind of laugh about it. But then he stood up, he took his jacket, he rolled it up in a ball, and he started throwing it. He was aiming to hit the secretary. And I knew at that point I had to intervene, because he had gotten to the point where it was uncontrollable. He actually wanted to hurt somebody because he wasn't first. And because I would normally say, I don't care. I don't have to be first. If I don't mind if somebody else is first. And I was going to tell the doctor that. I did tell the doctor that. But it was just something that was interesting to me that it got to that point. So I decided to intervene. And I talked to the doctor about it. And the doctor said he was going to talk to him. And if he didn't want to be second, then he better find another doctor, because I was going to be first because of my pain level. I kind of got a kick out of it, but when he acted like he was going to hit somebody, then that was a time that he had to be challenged with that. And the thought occurred to me that anyone who can stamp their feet, holler, and throw something probably wasn't in as much pain as I was in anyway. So the doctor did talk to him, and I don't know what the outside end of it was, but the doctor talked to him, and I didn't see him after that. The doctor told me he was going to tell him either behave appropriately or find another doctor. At any rate, I never saw him after that. He may have been dismissed, but I'm not sure whether he was or not. So ordinarily, when you look at something like that, you want to say, grow up. A temper tantrum is the province of a 2-year-old, but not when you're in your 70s. But there's a lot more going on here. As I said before, if you behave in a certain way to get a certain result and it doesn't work, you resort to anger or depression. And a lot of behavior is due to getting what you want. But then there are other things to consider here. It goes to a deeper level. A person like that who acts like they're on top of things, they need to be first, and they get really observable behavior that's annoying, they usually don't feel like they're first. They usually feel uncomfortable. They feel that they're not worthy. They have a poor self-concept. A self-concept is how you feel about yourself. It can be negative, it can be positive, it can be somewhere in between. And for most of us, it's somewhere in between. We generally have positive feelings about ourselves, but sometimes a few negative feelings as well. So in this case, I would have to say he was very uncomfortable. He did not feel like he was worthy, and the whole thing is like a show to prove that he is something that he is not. Sometimes to prove to himself that he is better than he is, or to prove to other people that he is better than he thinks they think they are. So self-concept is based on how you think that other people think about you, and it gets a little bit complicated. So I would say that this person stamping his feet and throwing things in his 70s was a good key to the fact that he doesn't feel good about himself at all. And so he's trying to prove to himself that he is a good person, that he's better than he really is, but he doesn't think he's better than he really is. Now, how much of this is something that he recognizes is another question. People can behave in a certain way and they don't recognize what they're doing. They don't recognize how bad it is. They don't recognize how other people feel about them. Sometimes children who are mean and to other kids, they're trying to prove to themselves that they're better than they are, but they may not be conscious of it. A lot of behavior is based on things that we don't understand. And so if you're going in for counseling, what the counselor has to do is to figure out why you feel the way that you do. Now remember this about psychology. It's a study of observable behavior. Observable behavior is behavior that you can see. Some people would say psychology is a study of the mind, but that's not technically true because you can't see the mind. You can see behavior, and the behavior that you see is what you're responding to. Because people will see your behavior and then they will judge what you are like based on what they see. They're not looking directly at the mind. So it becomes very interesting. Psychology is an interesting field to study because two people can act the same for different reasons. Two people can act differently for the same reason. Now, with the tests that they have now and all of the technical skills they have now, they can pretty much judge a lot more than we used to be able to because it was strictly on behavior and nothing else but behavior. But you make inferences on the mind because of what the behavior is. Now, sometimes a person feels in a certain way, but they don't express it. Your feelings will always be out there. They will always be expressed in some kind of way. They may be expressed inwardly, or they may be expressed outwardly, but all kinds of emotions are going to be expressed. You do not have any kind of behavior that's not expressed in some kind of way. And you have to look at a situation of a 70-year-old man. He was in his 70s, I knew that. And he was stamping his feet like a 2-year-old having a temper tantrum, and you're tempted to say, grow up. You know, a 2-year-old can have a temper tantrum. We expect that, but we don't expect it of a person that's in their 70s. So why don't you grow up and get a life and just stop this behavior? But a lot of times the depth of the behavior is not recognized by the person who's doing it, and they don't understand why they're doing it to begin with. I have another example of a friend of mine. We were in graduate school together, and and we had psychology classes together, and it was on the second floor of a building, and there was a long staircase going up to the second floor. And so we would walk up together, and I soon realized she could walk up the steps, but she couldn't come down the steps standing up. In order to come down the steps, she had to sit down on the steps and go down step by step by step, sitting on the step as she went. Going up was no problem. She just went up the stairs like everybody does, but she couldn't come down that way. And I thought that was odd, and she thought it was odd, but she didn't know why she was doing it. So we got to talking about that. As a grad student, we were using whatever we knew about psychology to see if we could figure this out. It wasn't so hard to figure it out. When she started talking to me about her background, her father was a pilot. And every time he took off, when she was little, every time he took off, he would circle a house and he would tip his wings. That was like hello. That was like an acknowledgement. And so he did that all the time, and she got used to it. Unfortunately, one of those times, something happened to the plane and it crashed. He took it up, he circled around, he tipped his wings to acknowledge her, and then he couldn't get the plane straight again. It fell down. He crashed the plane and he died. So what we figured out is going up the stairs to her was going up like her father used to go up. Going down, there was a crash. She lost him. She lost her father because he died in the crash. So she can't go down directly. That's symbolic of her losing her dad. So she could go down only if she scooched down on her backside and just went down step by step by step by step. And that was the reason that she did that. It was symbolic. A lot of behavior is symbolic. Now we have to remember, though, how conscious are people of what they are doing. Sometimes they're conscious and sometimes they're not conscious. And they know they may be doing something, but they don't recognize why. And some people do recognize why, but a lot of people don't. And so a therapist's job would have to go in and they'd have to touch base like I did with her, and we figured out what it was. It was symbolic of losing her father. And eventually, of course, she was able to go down. There are some people who understand what's wrong with them. They understand what happened to them in the past, but they can't get over it. There's a different step. You understand what your feelings are. You understand why you did the way that you do. And then you have to step further in order to overcome that. So she could understand that she went down the steps on her, sitting down on the steps, but she did it because it was symbolic of losing her father. She never had figured that out. We figured that out together. So how would she get healed from that? Understanding what your behavior is just the first step toward healing. After that, you have to maybe have other types of therapy to get over it, and the knowledge itself may bring healing, but may not bring healing. But usually, at least it's the first step toward healing. And then I imagine, I didn't do any more with her until she had discovered the origin of her problem, but I imagine if she went to a therapist, he would take her gradually, one step at a time. Say you have a person, if you're a counselor and you have a person who's afraid of bridges, you don't take them over a bridge because that's too traumatic for them. They may have had a problem in the past, or maybe they were in an accident when they were going across the bridge. You don't directly confront that, but you first show them pictures of bridges. You kind of desensitize them. Then you take them to a bridge, but you don't take them over it. They're looking at the bridge. The bridge is right in front of them. And what are they doing? They're in a panic, because they know they're going to have to go at some point over a bridge, and they can't take it because of whatever happened to their past that caused them to be afraid of bridges to begin with. So you take them through, you get them to the point where they understand what the problem is, and then you start to desensitize them. You talk about it, you look at pictures of bridges, you go to a bridge and you sit and you look at the bridge. Cars are going back and forth, they're all right, that they can take the first step. We'll go a little bit on the bridge, and take the first and get off it as quickly as we can. And after a period of time, we are able to take care of them, and they will be able to go across bridges. Any kind of a traumatic event is going to give you actually a change in the brain. Now, I say that you can't see directly what's going on in the mind, but you can certainly test the brain with different tests to find out how a person is reacting. They can also tell you how they're reacting. I'm afraid now. Why are you afraid? It's a bridge. I'm afraid of bridges. I can't go over a bridge. I'm too afraid. So the idea is to get them so it becomes a little familiar, less and less fear, and then they can take as first step, we'll go over a short bridge, just a real short bridge. It won't be long at all. And they get used to that. Then you take them to the next step. They can go a little bit in a longer bridge and go for a longer period of time on a bridge. Eventually, they should be able to desensitize, and they don't have to be fearful. So anytime that you have a fear, you have to consider there's a reason for the fear. You may or may not know what it is. You may, feel afraid of dogs. Maybe you were bitten. There are different degrees of fear, but you have to come to a knowledge, some kind of a knowledge of what went wrong to begin with, and then after that, you build on that and desensitize a little bit at a time. So this is the kind of thing that happens. The man who's stomping his feet on the ground, and it looks really silly because he's so old, you don't expect a 70-year-old to do that. And you're tempted to say, grow up. But he's got problems that he hasn't been able to heal from, so the behavior continues. Now, of course, I realize some people behave in a certain way, and they don't have any kind of an illness. They're just doing it to get their own way. How do you stop that? You don't let them get their own way. If a child says you're going shopping, and they have to be ready in a half an hour, and they completely ignore you, and they go over the time limit a little more and a little more, and you're about to take and pull your hair out, you just don't let them go on the shopping trip. I'm going, but you weren't on time, so you're going to stay here, and I'm going by myself, but I want to come. Yes, but you disobeyed me. You didn't fit in your schedule the fact that it's going to take you a certain amount of time to get rest or to put on your shoes, something like that. So you have to know individually what is going on with the person in order to be able to work with them. And I've worked with a lot of people. I had a counseling service for over 20 years, and I've worked with a lot of people. And after a while, you get to know people well enough to know where they're at and why are they acting a certain way. If it's a therapeutic issue, you need all your time and all your patience to work with them and gradually get them over the hump. If it's just for selfish reasons, you just don't let them get by. I had one student who threatened to commit suicide. She did it every Friday night because she knew I'd be worried about her all weekend. And finally, I had a talk with her. I didn't think she was suicidal at all. Now, you can't just do this unless you know a person well enough to know that it's safe to do it. But I finally talked to her, and I said, you threaten suicide to me every Friday. I think it's because you want me to worry about you every weekend. And I says, I'm not going to worry about you every weekend. It's your decision. I don't want you to do anything to yourself. I don't want you to commit suicide, but I'm not going to sit and worry all weekend because you made a threat. Because the choice is yours, whether you live or whether you don't live. And I'm not a judge of that, and neither will I be responsible if it happens, because I've already talked to you about it, and you have to be responsible for your own decisions. And it worked. With her, it worked, and she never attempted to talk to me about suicide again. She was fine. But of course, you really have to know a person before you can talk like that to them. And you wouldn't do it if you didn't know the person so thoroughly that you felt it was safe to do. So in terms of human behavior, remember, psychology is is watching behavior and observable behavior, making inferences about a person based upon what they said, getting to know them and getting to understand them, so that if there is a deeper issue, you can work with them and expose that. And of course, you would be probably calling another specialist too to help you out with it. But then on the other hand, you just need to remember, do not judge behavior, because two people can act differently for the same reason, or people can act differently for the same reason, and it gets to be complicated, and you cannot be the judge. You have to really know what you're doing. But for a show like this, I'm just going to talk about things like this just to get you aware of how complicated human behavior is, and also maybe to help you with your own self-understanding. So I'll close it here, and we'll continue with these shows next time. Thank you for watching.